Welcome to Jyotish with Marc Boney. Marc is an internationally renowned teacher, author, and practitioner of the ancient astrological science of India. He is known for his engaging teaching and writing style and his ability to communicate the complex concepts of Jyotish in a clear, understandable way. Now, here is Marc Boney.
Hello everyone, I'm here to talk to you today about Vedic astrology and what I would consider to be its essence, which comes down to two important concepts. These are things that make it very unique and I think more powerful than any other form of astrology that's ever come into existence. One is something called and referred to as yogas. In this context, that word simply means different ways, different planetary combinations that are given in the ancient texts that are said to represent different types of karma that a person could potentially experience in their lifetime. So that represents, you might say, the static potential of a chart. The other component, the other side of the equation, is something called dashas. That word means periods, planetary periods, and it's the way in which timing is shown. At any one time, a person can be said to be running the period of some planet. Some of these are quite long. For example, the Venus period is 20 years long, and then within that, 9 sub-periods. So, as my students who take my classes know that I'm fond of saying, yogas show what, dashas show when. Yogas show what potentials karmically exist for the individual in that particular lifetime, and dashas show when that karma is going to be activated and become manifest. And to give you some idea of this and to illustrate these two concepts, I'd like to show you now the chart of someone you're probably going to recognize if you watch movies. This is the chart of Hollywood movie star Gwyneth Paltrow, and I'd like to tell you a little story. So back in the fall of 2012, I had gone to visit my Jyotish guru K.N. Rao in New Delhi, India. I hadn't seen him face-to-face for 16 years, so it was quite an enjoyable experience for me. One of the occasions that was going on there was an international conference that his school there puts on every year. I actually hadn't gone to present there as I have in past years, but students, based on some of the things that K.N. Rao said about me, came to know that I taught, and so I was asked to present in the evenings after the regular conference schedule was over. So at the first time I did this, and I was thinking about, okay, well, what am I going to speak about? And most of the students were still relatively at a beginning level, so I thought I would explain to them and to show them this idea of what I considered to be the essence of Jyotish, yogas and dashas. So I showed them the chart of Gwyneth Paltrow, and I shared with them that back in the, I believe it was the mid-90s, she was only 25 at the time, she actually won the Oscar for Best Actress, an Academy Award, for her performance in the movie Shakespeare in Love. And this happened in her life in what would be considered to be the major period of Rahu, the north node of the moon, 18-year period, and the sub-period of the moon. So I showed them this chart, I informed them about this, and I asked them how could we understand this astrologically? Why is it that this particular sub-period and sub-period proved to be so auspicious for her, that represented a major career peak? And some of them knew some Jyotish, so they looked at her Rahu here, which if you focus in on the chart, you'll see that it falls in her 11th house. It's with Jupiter, the planet who's actually the ruler of the 11th house. And so someone said, well, the 11th house, one of its meanings is awards and honors, and so this could be the indication that she could have such an experience during this time, which is a very good and accurate statement. Then I said, well, why the moon sub-period? Why Rahu moon? And then another student said, well, the moon here is in Taurus, where it's said to have its exaltation sign, meaning it can give its results rather favorably and strongly. And again, that was a somewhat correct answer. It certainly contributed as to why this period and sub-period proved to be so special for her. But then I said, there's another major reason here. Can anyone see it? And people said different things, weren't really what I was looking for. And finally I said that the real reason that this period proved to be so special for her, Rahu moon, is because it activated in her chart something called Makuta Yoga. Now the word, Sanskrit word Makuta means the crown, all right? And Makuta Yoga is a combination that under the right conditions can elevate you, put you in a high position, put you in a situation where you're winning laurels, right? Where you wear the crown, as she did when she won the award for Best Actress. And the way this yoga is defined, you'll find it in the ancient text, is that when Jupiter falls in the 8th house from the moon. So if we put our finger on the moon here and we count 8 from there, 8 houses, 8 signs from there, you'll come to the position of Jupiter in her chart, strong in its own sign, Sagittarius. This gives Makuta Yoga. Now, normally, when Jupiter falls in such a position from the moon, it's not a favorable yoga at all. It's called Shakata Yoga. Shakata means bullock cart, and it can be a yoga for not being very fortunate in your finances. They're slow moving like a bullock cart, and they have their ups and downs. But when Jupiter appears in its own sign, as it does in her chart, this would be either, of course, Sagittarius or Pisces, or when it appears in its exaltation sign, Cancer, and is falling 8th from the moon, well, then it produces a very different combination, this Makuta Yoga, which is a highly favorable yoga that can put you in a position to, metaphorically wear the crown, as it did in her case. Now, at this point, someone said, yes, but it was in Rahu moon, not in Jupiter moon, that she won her award. And then we have to understand how the north and south node of the moon give their results. In Jyotisha, they're referred to as Chaya Grahas, or shadowy planets. They have no substance. You can't look up in the celestial sphere and see Rahu and Ketu. They are mathematical points along the celestial sphere. They're more like energy vortexes that the ancient seers saw that they take on and give the results of whatever they're associated with. So in the chart of Gwyneth Paltrow, you can see that her Rahu is with Jupiter. So it's going to give the results of Jupiter. Therefore, if the Makuta Yoga combination is made up of the moon and Jupiter, Rahu is also going to give those results, which is what it did in her Rahu moon period. Now, those who may be a little more advanced students, if you saw the degrees of Rahu, you would see that it's also in a condition what's called Vargotama, meaning that it falls in the Navamsha division also, both the same sign, both the divisions, and therefore, has great strength. Another reason that the Rahu period could bring the kind of results that it did. So, of course, this was 2020 hindsight analysis, which does not at all impress the astrological skeptic. But that evening, I also made a prediction. Bear in mind that this was fall of 2012. Well, she had run her 18-year Rahu period and was now in her next period, which happens to be her Jupiter period. And I saw that she was coming up to a major period of Jupiter, sub-period of the moon. Again, the two planets that were configured in this Makuta Yoga that showed, again, this certain potential. And I saw that that potential was going to get activated in 2014, especially around the May period of 2014. So to this group publicly, I made a prediction. I said that this period and sub-period you watch will also prove very special. It'll be something of a professional peak for her. And again, she'll be honored and win awards. I didn't predict she would win another Academy Award, but I just said that, she's going to do notable things during this time. So what happened? It's a matter of record that, during that time, she was appearing in a series of movies, Iron Man movies, that were extremely popular, playing this character called Pepper Potts. And one of the sequences came out at that time and nearly broke all box office records. In other words, was very popular. But simultaneously, she had come out with a cookbook that became a New York Times bestseller. And this time period also coincided with her appearing on the cover of a celebrity magazine here in the U.S. called People magazine, where she was declared, the world's most beautiful person. So in this way, the period did prove to be very special. Now, I'm telling you about this because it illustrates this point that I'm wishing to make, that yogas show what, dashas show when. This Makuta Yoga showed a certain potential. When it was activated in her mid-20s, during Rahu moon is when she won her Oscar, and then, sometime later, considerably later, when she was running her Moon-Jupiter period, it got activated again, and again it proved to be a special time in her life. And this was predictable based on just these two factors, this idea of yogas and dashas, yoga showing what and dashas shows when. Of course, you had to be able to recognize that she had Makuta Yoga in her chart, and this is what I was wanting to illustrate to the students that were hearing this presentation. You might say that one of the main ways that potentials can be seen in a birth chart is by identifying the yogas. And these days, actually, there are computer programs that help you identify the yogas in the chart, but what no computer program can do is what's called qualify the yoga, that is, show whether the yoga is actually going to bring much result or not. These combinations can be thought of giving results maybe in three major categories, giving their full result, their full fruit. Then yogas that maybe we're only going to give their partial fruit. They don't have they don't have some strength associated with them. And then there are yogas that actually won't give much of a result at all. The analogy that I use is that you can have a bank account, which would be like the structure of a yoga, but of course if you don't have any money in a bank account, it's not going to do you much good. You're not going to be able to withdraw from that. And in the same way, you could have the structure of a yoga in your chart, but if the planets involved are not strong, then it's not going to give its results that much. So to further illustrate this idea of yogas and dashas, I'd like to now show you another chart about which I had also made a prediction, and that is the chart of current U.S. President Barack Obama. So since I think the election 2000, I've had fun predicting the outcome of the presidential election based on the two charts of the candidates, and I'm fortunate to be able to tell you that I've been successful in each election since then. And then, so in 2008, Barack Obama was the Democratic candidate running against the Republican candidate, John McCain. And I saw that at the time of the election, he was going to be running the major period of Jupiter and the sub-period of the Moon. All right? And now this Makuta Yoga that's brought about by a Moon-Jupiter combination does not exist in his chart, but actually another yoga given in the ancient texts that involves the Moon and Jupiter is present in his chart. And this yoga is defined when the Moon is, again, needs to be in its exaltation sign, which you can see in his chart. It's in the sign Taurus, its exaltation sign. It also needs to be falling in one of the houses that are called either angle houses or trine houses. Angle houses are houses 1, 4, 7, and 10. Trine houses are houses 1, 5, 9. In the case of Barack Obama, again, you can see here that the Moon is in the 5th house. So two of the conditions that have to be present for this yoga to be in a chart we see are fulfilled here. The Moon has to be actually either in its own sign or its exaltation sign, and it has to fall in an angle and a trine, both of which apply to the chart of Barack Obama. The third very important factor is that this Moon has to receive the aspect of Jupiter. Aspects are the ways in which in Vedic astrology planets get connected. And Jupiter is said to throw an aspect on houses 5 and 9 from itself. So if you take the position of his Jupiter here in Capricorn, his Lagna, his ascending sign, you count 5 from there, you're going to come to Taurus, which is the position of his Moon. So Moon gets this aspect of Jupiter. Now, what's interesting about this is that for Gauri Yoga to be able to, that's what this yoga is called, by the way. This yoga is referred to as Gauri Yoga. Gauri is a Sanskrit word. It refers to the Divine Mother, or the feminine aspect of the divine. Here, in order for Gaura Yoga to give its effects, what typically needs to be an additional condition is that Jupiter needs to be strong. It needs to have some sort of strength. But Barack Obama's Jupiter, the planetary period that gave him the presidency, actually falls in its debilitation sign, Capricorn, which usually when a planet falls in its debilitation sign, the interpretation of that is that it has some weakness. It's not going to be able to give its results very strongly or very favorably. But there are some technical reasons, some exceptions, situations where that condition can actually get canceled or reverse itself, in which case a Jupiter or a debilitated Jupiter like this can give very strong results. But actually, one of the main reasons, if I can show you here, that Jupiter is going to be able to give strong results in this chart is that you'll see that in one of the primary divisional charts used in Jyotish, it now is falling in its own sign, Pisces. When a planet falls in its own sign, then it can give its results strongly. One of the main purposes of the divisional charts, the Vargas as they're called in Jyotish, is to be able to see the underlying strength of planets. The birth chart might be considered more like the tip of the iceberg. The divisional charts are what lies beneath, and sometimes the condition of a planet in the birth chart can be rather deceptive, as his Jupiter is here, and it actually can have some great underlying strength, which in his case it does. So I saw when I was contemplating the idea of the election that he was running his Jupiter major period here, sub-period of the moon. And besides this Gaura Yoga, his Jupiter gives the results of some other favorable yogas, particularly what's called a Raja Yoga, a combination that can raise you up. But I would say that the primary basis of my prediction that he would win the election, that he would become the next president, had to do with this Gaura Yoga, and that the fact that he was running the period and sub-period of his Gaura Yoga. So again, this is what I mean when I say the essence of Jyotish is yogas and dashas, with yogas showing what, dashas showing when. So upcoming here, starting in June, actually June 15th, I'm going to be starting a video subscription series in which I'm going to be teaching Graha yogas. There are hundreds of Graha yogas given in the ancient texts. I'm going to be focused on the ones that are the most significant, most important, and I'm going to be teaching these yogas and learning how to recognize them in a birth chart, but more importantly and maybe more critically, I'm going to be teaching the skill of qualifying the yoga. That is, being able to assess which yogas are actually going to give their fruit, to what degree, the quality of the yoga, because this is the more difficult aspect of Jyotish. In the case of the Makuta Yoga that we looked at in the chart of Gwyneth Paltrow, one of the reasons it gave the strong results that it was is because the planets involved had sources of strength. We saw that her moon was in its exaltation sign. We saw that Rahu was in this Vargotama condition. We saw that her Jupiter was in its own sign. All of these greatly contributed to that particular yoga giving a very, very strong result. So starting June 15th, I'll be beginning this video subscription series. What's involved is that anyone who signs up for a subscription, each week you would receive a pre-recorded video, such as the one you're watching now, on a particular yoga, looking at illustrations of this in the charts of well-known personalities, and seeing different variations of it that gave different degrees of results, and I'm going to be teaching you why and how to recognize that. So that's one component of the program. The other component of the program is that with each of these videos every week, you would also receive the written material associated with that lesson, that has all the learning points fully articulated, all the charts that are illustrating those learning points. If you've ever seen any of my articles, you'll know what this written material looks like. It's really actually quite extensive. So that's a second component of these, what you get from a subscription. The third component is that there will be a monthly live webinar that anyone who has a subscription to can participate in, where we're going to then be looking at all the yogas again that were taught that month in different variations. And there's the opportunity to ask questions, because of course if you're listening to a pre-recorded video or you're reading some written material, there's no opportunity to ask a question. So that's one of the main purposes of the live webinar. 3 components: a weekly video, a weekly articulated written lesson to go along with that, and then lastly the monthly webinar. I'm actually doing this because it was requested among students. They've been reading my written materials, my articles for a long time, and a lot of people said, Mark, I'd rather watch and listen and learn that way, which is, very common these days. And so would you start doing video presentations? So in response to those requests by students, I've decided to go ahead and do this series. And if you're interested in learning about this most fascinating essence of Jyotish, yogas and dashas, I invite you to participate. Namaste, and hope to see you involved. Bye for now.
Learn more at www.marcboney.com.